Fantastic. Let me click OK. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Scott Glassman. I'm the director of the Master of Applied Positive Psychology program, the online program based out of the Philadelphia campus. Been part of the PCOM family for 13 years as faculty and then 5 years as a doctoral student in the clinical psychology PSYD program. So I've been with our community for quite a long time. It is a wonderful community, and it is a community that is dedicated to holistic well-being and wellness. And that's what we're going to talk about today. How do we use the science of well-being to improve the levels of joy, meaning, and connection that we can feel on a daily basis? And so I hope to share with you some useful strategies that you can immediately begin implementing in your day-to-day routines. So a little bit about, let's just kind of jump into one of the most important premises before I talk about the science of well-being and the habits of happiness and how to maximize well-being in tough situations. But I'd like to invite you all to look at this slide and put into the chat window, if you could, what do you notice about this slide? Go ahead and type what's the first thing that you become aware of. We'll take like about maybe like 30, 40 seconds to do that. And I'll keep an eye on the chat to see. So Kelly, you said 6 + 6 = 13. Jamie says first notice the double numbers. See any other things? If the first thing that you notice, Makita says the last one is wrong. Yeah. So if your eyes are drawn to the last line on this slide, that 6 + 6 does not equal 13. Obviously, it equals 12. This shows a very prominent effect that we battle maybe outside of our awareness every single day. And that is the tendency to be drawn into the one thing that's wrong versus the 3 or 4 or 10 or 15 or 30 things that are right. And you can think about a day that you've had where that one stressful thing happened. Maybe it was an argument, you got disappointing news, and then there were 3 or 4 positive things that happened. Well, you may focus intently your attention and your feelings and your thought processes around the one really stressful thing that happened, and that's natural. We do that, but here's the problem: we kind of ignore the other good things, and so we lose out on opportunities and we've all seen the glass half empty, half full example, right? That's a common idea in our society, that we can see the same glass in different ways, right? We can look at life from a deficit point of view of what don't we have, what's wrong, where am I lacking? So it can be self-focused, it can be world-focused, it can be future-focused, that kind of negative attentional vortex. For lack of a better word, it is like a vortex, right? It can really pull you in, looking at negative news stories, listening to the stress of others, right? There's all sorts of reasons why we get trapped into that negative chamber that is really reluctant to let us out of it. So the other thing that is interesting here too is that we can kind of flip that script pretty quickly. And so if I asked you what's in this glass, you would probably say, well, it looks like, by the color, it looks like water, right? So if I asked you then can you focus on what the meaning of that water is in a positive way? What are some positive meanings of that water? Maybe it's like it could quench my thirst. It represents life, right? There's all sorts of positive meanings within that water. Now, I've helped you go from a deficit mindset by not looking at what's empty in the glass, but looking at where it's filled. We went from a deficit mindset into a fullness mindset, and with just one question, right? Tell me about the water. Tell me about the water. And not to oversimplify habits of happiness and the application of positive psychology principles, but it often is about the questions we ask ourselves. What is one good thing that happened to me today versus what went wrong today? That one question is like the jumping off point for a whole host of other thoughts, feelings, and meanings, ideas, memories, connections. It's like you think about a spider web, and you're jumping from one spider web to another spider web, a whole different matrix, a whole different network of feelings, thoughts, feelings, actions, memories, relationships. So that's what our evening's going to be a lot about, is how do we really focus in on that shift? And we want to avoid, in doing that, we want to avoid and recognize before we circumvent it, is the negativity effect. And when we get trapped in negativity, here are the consequences. We probably recognize that when we're more negative, we tend to maybe catastrophize. Think about the worst things that can happen. We avoid new experiences. We're closed off to them. We may experience a state of, how many of you have heard of the state of fight or flight? Is that term familiar? Yeah. So it's fight or flight when the bear is chasing us. That's why I put a picture of a bear here. If you feel like in life something dangerous is approaching you or is after you, then your heart's going to race, right? You're going to sweat. You're going to be physiologically aroused in order to escape danger. The problem is that when we get trapped in the negativity effect, our warning system, our body's warning system, our mind's warning system becomes hyperactive. It's almost like the red lights are always going off. And so that can be a difficult cycle to get out of, because there's a feeling that we're protecting ourselves, that we're saving ourselves from danger. And so that's why this negativity effect is really sometimes a tough trap, and we ruminate more. How many of you worry here? Raise your hand if you've ever really worried kind of a little bit more than you wanted to. And yeah, okay, so I see lots of hands up. And even if you have your cameras off, maybe you're raising your hand behind the camera. So if that's the case, yeah. When you look at worry, what is worry? We think about worry as a way of sometimes trying to solve a problem. If we worry about it enough, I'll just figure out the right answer. But the problem is that worry makes us suffer unnecessarily when it has nothing to do often with the outcome. It could be a good outcome, it could be a bad outcome. If we worry and it's a bad outcome, how many times have we suffered? Twice, right? And so by not worrying, we're reducing our suffering. So that's kind of one of the cues to pay attention to. How much do you ruminate? Because that's the key to stepping out of it, to notice, like, you know what, this worry, you might want to write this down. This worry is not getting me anywhere, or because I'm worrying isn't helping the situation. That's a way of like short circuiting that kind of anxiety, that source of anxiety. So now we have this fella, and what happens if we stay stuck in the negativity effect for too long? Well, there's three things that happen. One is we get exhausted. Negativity exhausts us. It is draining. It makes us not as effective at work. Our relationships suffer. We become less engaged in our leisure pursuits. We just don't have enough in the tank. And so we become emotionally exhausted. And then what else happens? Well, we feel distant from other people. There's a term called depersonalization. It's a fancy word for feeling disconnected. We feel like we're floating islands. And what else can happen? Oftentimes, if that negativity effect kicks up too much and we're wrapped up in rumination, we're focusing on that one line in the slide, which is wrong. Low sense of accomplishment. So we don't feel like we are as successful as we really are. We don't acknowledge our successes, our strengths, our wins, what we have overcome, the challenges that we've been creative in solving. So this is the recipe. This is the formal recipe. It's been studied for burnout. If you've heard that term like cast about, students can feel burned out, faculty can feel burned out, anybody can feel burned out, no matter what field you're in, no matter what stage of life you're in. It's usually a combination of emotional exhaustion, disconnection, and the feeling like you really haven't made much of a dent in a positive way in the world. And so what I'm going to talk about this evening are specific strategies that target each of these vulnerabilities. What are some ways we can refill our emotional tanks? What are some ways we can feel more connected to the people who we care about and who care about us, and to even people that we don't know as well? And how can we feel a greater sense that I can? Yes, I can do this. Um, all of those factors, I think, are a part of this well-being picture. How do you feel happier? Well, a lot of times it's by working on the areas that we're feeling depleted in, disconnected in, and a low sense of accomplishment. There's one before I start going into the more of the positive side, I think it's all positive what we're talking about so far, but the more distinctly positive side of these strategies is this idea of, what if I'm hurting? Are you telling me, Dr. Glassman, that I should just push away or minimize my negative emotions or negative thoughts? Should I not even look at them? Should I just try to suppress them? Well, here's what we know from the science of it. When you try, like, everybody try not to think of an elephant. Okay? You're not thinking of an elephant, right? You're probably thinking of an elephant, right? The more we right? The more we try to suppress a thought, the more that thought actually occurs. So by trying to avoid and push away and say, "Oh, this is not, I can't feel this way," the more likely you're going to feel that way. It's a paradoxical effect. So I want to propose something that when the dark trees of life are surrounding you, you're lost in the forest of negative events. They all happen to us. There are three things that you can do. The first is being mindful. Being mindful means being able to watch your experience without identifying with the story of what's happening. It's almost like you're able to hover. You ever have that feeling you're able to, like, kind of watch what's happening and you feel a little bit like the buffer zone? I could be up here if, having a rotten day, but I'm sort of watching me having a rotten day, which makes it a little bit better. Well, that's the application of mindfulness, and it's very effective. And one of my favorite uh, meditators, teachers, a Vietnamese teacher named Thich Nhat Hanh, you may have heard of him, says that being alive is a miracle. Breathing in, I know I'm alive. So Thich Nhat Hanh is talking about the idea that we can be mindful of simple things like breathing, and we can feel the miracle in breathing. So one of the ways that we can get out of this forest of difficulty is by focusing in on the simple things that are always there for us. Breathing, maybe being able to see, hear something through our senses. If you can't see or hear, taste. Um, if the ability to have a roof over our heads, if we're so fortunate, clothes on our back. Being mindful of the simple aspects of life, which are gifts to us. That's one way of approaching the pain. Another way of approaching the difficulty is by recognizing that you're not alone with your suffering. It's called common humanity. And this is the idea that, you know what? Everybody experiences difficulty no matter what station of life or role they have in life. We all experience it. So, common humanity along with mindfulness. And there's a third element, which is self-kindness. Can I be kind to myself in a moment of difficulty? So, can I be mindful? Can I sort of watch it? Can I connect with my breath in a very mindful way, something that's neutral or positive or a gift in my life? Can I have a sense that I am not alone? I'm together with others who are suffering, and can I be kind to myself? These are the ideas around self-compassion, mindfulness, self-kindness, and common humanity. If you embrace all of those areas, if you're able to practice all of those areas, then Kristen Neff tells us that your mental health will be much improved, and you'll be more resilient because you're not meeting stress with resistance, which creates more of that stress. You're meeting it with a hug. You're meeting it by embracing yourself. And we often need the embrace in order to get to this. And what is this? This is the meadow. This is the clearing in the trees, in the dark forest. So if you can't feel happier, and oftentimes we can't feel happier, what we can do is find a place of equanimity. a place of greater peace, a place of kind of being able to be with ourselves and non-judgmentally. So being with ourselves non-judgmentally is a stepping stone into more positive experiences. And maybe that's 3 days from now, maybe that's a week from now. I never tell anyone there's a time frame on when you need to pivot from feeling distress and burned out. Like, because we can't predict that. We can't predict when you're going to feel ready to move from the meadow into more positive realms and more nourishing realms. But this is the thing, recognize, am I suffering? If I'm suffering, can I bring self-compassion in the form of mindfulness, self-kindness, and common humanity? Can I find the meadow of acceptance? And then can I move from there from the meadow of acceptance into more active positive emotions? So there are 4 pillars I want to talk about this evening that may be helpful for you. So one of the pillars, along with self-compassion, and this is kind of related to mindfulness, is can you approach the world with a beginner's mind? What do I mean by beginner's mind? Well, think of like when you were a child and you experience something wonderful for the first time. Think back to the time when maybe you was learning to ride a bike for the first time. What was the delight that you felt? You know, what maybe it was tasting a wonderful food for the first time. Um, my dad gave me ice cream when I was like, gosh, I was like a baby, but I remember it's one of my first memories. And I didn't have be had a different form of beginner's mind. I wailed because he put this cold stuff in my mouth, and I was crying. He told me that the ice cream was like dribbling out of my mouth. It was like I was very upset that so put something freezing in my mouth. But anyway, I had beginner's mind because I was discovering something in the world. Sometimes when we label and we approach life with like more cynicism, we close off the pathways to happiness. So see if we can reacquaint ourselves with curiosity. Another wonderful teacher is Shunryu Suzuki, Zen monk and teacher, who said the beginner's mind is full of possibilities. If you have more of a wondrous approach, if you approach the world with awe and openness and curiosity, wow, what's going to happen today? And you're open to that with an open heart and warmth, then so many more possibilities of the good can come in. So approach life with beginner's mind. Here's my elephant example. I kind of spoiled my elephant example early on. I said, don't think of an elephant, but here I'm going to bring a different version of this elephant exercise to the table. So I'm wondering if you can look at this picture and allow the label of elephant to fade away. So I'm going to give you about 30 seconds. Invite yourself to just release the label of elephant. See what you notice intently or vividly about this picture as you allow the name to dissolve. Is anything becoming more vivid? What is your attention drawn to in this picture? Go ahead and put that in the chat, or you can open your microphone. I see that some of us are on camera, which is wonderful. Kimura, let's see, Des, Lashonda, the trees. Makita, yeah, you're seeing the trees. Wonderful observation. Anything else anyone seeing or is like standing out? Kelly says the sand and the dirt. Yes, the sand. Right. Kimura, you're having, yeah, Jamie, you said the sky, so the blue sky. Kimura, you said safari, so you the association um of being on a safari and seeing the elephant. What this exercise is designed to do is to show us that we can reawaken our minds to the beginner's mind, to possibilities, by trying not to label everything so much, trying to get out of like, I need to assign what this is and what that is and what I'm doing here and what I'm doing there. Sometimes if we just allow ourselves, as you said, the texture of the skin, yes, that's one thing that jumped out to me as I released the label, as I released the name. My perceptual acuity really honed in on the wrinkles and the texture of the elephant's skin. Um, yes, you experience the world in so much more of a close way, like a very vivid, real, on the nerve kind of way. And that is a doorway for positive experience if we are guiding that a little bit more. Tiffany says the openness and freedom of wide open space. Yeah, so I really love that you have all these positive associations. Another pillar that I'm going to talk about, along with this idea of beginner's mind, is the idea of why do we say good things to other people? Why do we tell people good things about our day? Well, it's because happiness spreads socially. Like if I'm sharing one good thing about my day, you may be thinking about something similar that's positive about your day, or even if it's not similar, you're thinking about maybe something good because someone else said something. So we know that that social effect of happiness really is a real thing. It spreads in our Happier You groups that we've run on all campuses, and also individually. We have a program. The idea is that if you're sharing good things with others, it percolates this kind of positivity effect. So that brings us to pillar 2, which is lift others up and let them lift you up, right? So rely on people who talk about the good to help you when maybe you're feeling a little bit down or a little bit less engaged, and vice versa. So we can help each other. We need to help each other, and the science says that that really is possible. Even at social media, how many of you post on social media? Show of hands. Any like either Instagram, Facebook, all the like whatever. Yeah. So when be conscientious of what you're posting. Is it positive or negative? I'm assuming most of your posts are positive, but maybe some aren't. When you post something positive, according to the research, you are impacting the mood of somebody in a distant place who's reading that post potentially, because the algorithms, they show your posts to many different people who you may not even know. And they manipulated the feeds in this one study. So they made one feed really less positive, and then one feed also less negative. And they found that if they're reducing positivity in the feed, guess what happens to people's status updates? They become more negative. And you're reducing the negative, they become more positive. So we affect, we think about, we're living in a global electronic community, a world wide web. It really is a world wide web. So lift others up and they will lift you up. Hopefully you're kind of perpetuating that positivity and that happiness. All right, so we see here, this is a really fun fact that each of us has about 6,200 thoughts per day. Isn't that incredible? Like, did you realize that your mind is that active of the core? I mean, it makes sense, right? We're thinking beings. I think, therefore I am, or I think, therefore I think some more. That's my in the moment modification of that, because I feel like in my life a perpetual thinker, probably to my detriment. But the average person has 6,200 thoughts per day. But the question that when it comes to well-being is, which of those thoughts will you amplify and act on and pay more attention to? And which will you allow to go? Which will you amplify and which will you allow to fade into the distance? Or I like the analogy of a stream, and each thought is a leaf on the stream. And there's some leaves that you want to pick up because they're beautiful, and then other leaves that cause you great distress that you may want to continue down that stream. So this brings up one of our core human needs, which is the need for agency, the need to be empowered, to feel like I have some control over my human experience. One of the best ways to have control over our human experience is to become more attentive to which thoughts we want to pull from the waters. Which leaves do we want to bring close to us and to look at a little bit more specifically, a little bit more in depth? We want to see the detail of that leaf. And that's a powerful, powerful approach. Where will that thought take you? Well, we know if you take a positive thought, if you write down a positive thought, that thought is likely going to lead to other positive thoughts. It's interconnected. You have neural networks that are firing, and you thinking of something, if you're thinking of something good, it's going to fire up all of the other good thoughts connected to that one. So what does this say? You can pick one thought out of the 6,200 that you have, and by amplifying it, by writing it down, by sharing it with somebody, you all of a sudden have 30 minutes of feeling better or 30 minutes of well-being. It goes to an effect, I don't have the name of this here, but the butterfly effect, which is just the principle that small changes, small shifts in our perception, small acts internally lead to monumental changes. So the saying goes, a butterfly's wings flapping in Brazil can cause a hurricane in Texas. Now that's the negative side of that. Now imagine we're all interdependent, all interconnected. Systems are interdependent, and small little changes in weather systems in one place affect weather somewhere else. So that's where this idea comes from. But there's an internal side to it. So think about your micro decisions. This is the pillar 3, and this is the take home point. Think about your micro decisions every day. Could you be potentially kinder to yourself or others in small ways? Could you hold the door open for someone? Could you, even though you're having a crummy day, could you send a text to somebody, that's a positive? These are the butterfly effect actions. These are the small, very infinitesimally small little choices that lead to big changes. And pillar 4 is based off of pillar 3. And that is what you pay attention to expands. What you pay attention to expands. Very simple principle. If you pay attention to what's going wrong will expand. It may not help you solve the problem. If you pay attention to what's right, and that's the whole point of positive psychology in the 90s when it came out, was like, let's pay more attention to our strengths versus our perceived weaknesses. All right, so let's go. Those are our 4 pillars. We'll keep them in mind. Have beginner's mind, lift others up, and let them lift you up. Small steps lead to monumental changes. These are really, really important pillars. And the idea that that when you think about what you think about expands, we're going to work on this right now. So this is the net of your attention, and I'd like you to close your eyes. So let's just try this. I invite you to close your eyes now, wherever you are. And I'd like you to bring to mind something in the past week or couple weeks that was positive for you. No matter how small of an event it is, allow that moment to come back to you in all of its vividness. See if you can identify what felt good about that moment. Who was there, if anyone? What was around you? What were you seeing or hearing or thinking? Now I invite you to recognize what good feelings came up for you in that moment. Perhaps it was gratitude or kindness or love or determination or pride or general happiness, contentment. Could be any of that wide array of positive feelings circulating around your good moment. Now consider what that good moment means about you or your life in a really good way. Because you had that moment, because you perhaps showed a strength in that moment or enjoyed something special, what else becomes possible? What do you feel inspired to do? How does that give your life even deeper meaning? Now I invite you to come back to this room and open your eyes as a brief excursion into a memory, a good memory. And I'm wondering if anybody would like to share what's one thing that they were thinking about. You can come off of mic or just put it into the chat. So we do these groups all the time. So we usually operate in 2 streams. So there's the chat contributions, and then there are people opening their mics. So whichever you're feeling most comfortable with.
hear me?
Yes. Hi, Kimura.
I, I have Alzheimer's. Most of the time I have light problems. So the thing that I feel so proud about that,
Oh, I'm sorry. Now, Kimura, you're fading out. Sorry,
okay,
we can't hear you.
what else talk?
Could you put it in the chat for us? Because I'd love to focus on it in the chat. I'm so sorry. The Zoom mic issues can be funny with Zoom. Um, Makita says, you've accepted a grad intern position at CVS. Congratulations. I'm going to give you, you're getting lots of hearts for that. Wonderful. And what
Thank
feelings,
you.
what good feelings? Oh, Makita?
hmm
Yeah. You want to tell us more about that?
So I'm already a regular pharmacy intern, and actually that was the only job I applied for. Uh, I don't think it's going to be at the store where I currently work, but it's still a position. So I I have that to look forward to. Not exactly where I thought I would be after pharmacy school, but it's definitely, in the field and will give me an opportunity to kind of position my family better on the back end and work on these student loans. So I don't have that stress to worry about. It'll start the Sunday after graduation, pretty much. So I'll go dive right
That's
in.
exciting. And when you look at these positive feelings, Makita, we're so happy for you. What good feelings out of this list come up for you in connection with that position?
Acceptance, pride, hope, gratitude.
So a lot of them that are
hmm
interconnected, that it's like this.
hmm
And I'm
And
sensing
one
a
less
little bit
thing to
of
worry about.
relief. Yeah, I was going to say relief also comes to mind. Yeah.
One less thing to worry about.
Yeah, thank you, and congratulations again. And we have
Thank you.
uh, Kimura, thanks for putting your moment into the chat. You felt good about spending quality time with your church mom while oh wow, while she's battling cancer and her only child is in the hospital. Wow, that is so touching, and I'm wondering if you can put the positive emotions around that quality time. That's very special. What a gift. And if we could see what some of those positive emotions are, we'll acknowledge them in the chat as well. Um, what we are doing here by identifying the positive feeling is we're helping the positive feeling reestablish itself in our minds and awareness, and it spreads to other feelings, and we can carry past good into the present. That's sort of what we're doing. We're in the emotional time machine, everybody. The positive emotional time machine that we're bringing past into present. And we're then also then potentially looking for more positive feelings in the future. Um, yeah, she needs a positive being around her. Yeah, and I imagine that positive being, that you could represent that positive being. Yeah. Great. So this was an example of what we pay attention to expanding, right? It's the effect of the butterfly, of really looking at how our small perceptual choices, what we choose to bring memory-wise back, can really impact our well-being. I want to just introduce this idea of like, why is this so effective? Well, it's this idea of broaden and build. When you have any kind of positive emotions that you identify, joy, love, interest, contentment, gratitude, well, that leads to broadening your thinking and acting repertoire. So you become more creative, your mind's more flexible. And as a result of your mind being more flexible, you bring in more psychological, cognitive, and social and spiritual resources, environmental resources. You're kind of building up your reservoir, your positive coping reservoir. And as a result of doing that, what happens? Well, you live longer, you're more fulfilled, and your health is better. And how do we attribute that into our positive emotions? Well, that feeds back into our positive emotions. So we have more positive feelings. We're broader in our thinking. We bring in even more resources, and then the whole cycle is continuing. You see how it continues, and every time you come back around, you're coming back around at a higher point. That's that upward spiral that Barbara Fredrickson talks about. So literally, by participating in that exercise, you are developing these upward spirals of well-being. And then the 7 evidence-based happiness habits that I incorporated into this systematic approach to using these principles in a habitual way, a daily way, begin with looking within. And the title of this talk today is maximizing happiness by finding the sunshine within, finding the light within. And that's exactly where we begin in our Happier You program. We begin by spotlighting good events together, identifying the good feelings. Then we still stay inward and look at what are our strengths and accomplishments, what are our wins. Then we move into more of the outer relationship, inner to outer. What do I feel grateful for out in the world? Who do I feel grateful for? We cultivate gratitude like we're cultivating flowers in a garden, watering it, giving it sunlight. And then we're moving out into lightness, the lightness of being. So if you ever were able recently to play a board game or play with a niece or nephew who is younger, or if you have kids, playing with them. Anytime we get into child's mind and we know it's good for our well-being, it's good for our hearts, it's good for our immune systems, it's good for our emotional and social connections. So those are some of the outward pathways. Enjoyable and meaningful activities, what we fill our lives with in terms of what we do every day. We can get more joy and meaning out of what we do every day. We can add new activities. That's the fifth pathway. The doing, there's a lot of thinking before that, and there's a lot of kind of looking at our thoughts and looking at our emotional life, but there's also doing, which is tied to both of those. And then the last phase, the last two pathways are the transcendent variety of positive psychological approaches, being kind to others, love, and you might even incorporate spiritual practice in there. That's something that can help people transcend, is connecting with something broader than ourselves. It could be God, nature, your faith, whatever it is. It could just be, I don't want to say just it, but it could be how you volunteer and help people in the community or help people in your family, or you show love to people who need it the most. You are in this transcendent kind of realm when you're practicing within those two wavelengths. So this is the inside out approach to happiness and well-being. So these are the habits that I want to highlight a few. We don't have time for all of them, but I'm going to move fairly quickly. If you're interested in diving deeper into these habits, then the book is available. Tapping into strengths and successes. This is one of the earliest things that we do in the Happier You program. It's not about eliminating our weaknesses, as this quote says, but it's about developing our strengths and allowing our strengths to shine. So we're going to do this experientially. All right, we ready? We're ready to take a look at our strengths? Fantastic. Okay, that's a yes. And if you're watching the recording, I hope you have a piece of paper in front of you. You can write down your strengths. And if you're live with us, please feel free to do the same, or put it in your phone. But I'd like you to identify one or two strengths from this list that you feel like are really signature to you. Like you feel like if you ask 5 people, they would say, oh yeah, your strength is teamwork, or yes, your strength is perseverance, persistence. Maybe it's curiosity. So go ahead and note your strengths. The top 2, you can pick 2. You don't have to just pick 1. You can pick 2. You can even pick 3. And go ahead, and if you want to share those with me in the chat, I think our chat this evening is a good way of, kind of leveling the playing field when it comes to tech tonight and any tech issues. So go ahead and put your top 2 strengths into the chat. And I'd love to see what those are. Kamira says spirituality and love. Oh, wonderful strengths. And I see how they're connected too. Jamie says honesty and humor. Fantastic. Yeah, those are wonderful strengths. Makita, persistence and humility. Lashonda, love and self-control. Those are so powerful. Like I can see the more you express your loving self, the more control you have over your emotional space. Love is like this underlying current. I believe it underlies so much of our well-being and so many of our practices. Kelly, oh, you have 3, Kelly. Fantastic. I love that you have 3. Curiosity, love of learning, and zest. Yes, zest is underappreciated. You'll see in a moment why zest and curiosity are so important to well-being. But I love that constellation, Kelly. And Des says humility and love. Ah, not enough humility right out there in the world. The fact that you carry that as a strength. Um, by the way, if humility is one of your top strengths, you would say you are probably pretty good at beginner's mind, because beginner's mind relies on us to feel like, okay, I'm okay being a novice. I'm okay walking into a situation and say, I don't know. It's okay, I don't know, but I'm going to discover. Yeah, and I'm going to be humble about it. So curiosity, humility, they go together. Tiffany says, love, humor, and grit. No, Tiffany, I'm really glad you added grit. It's not on our list, but it certainly speaks to a constellation of like bravery, persistence, um, self-control. There's a lot of strengths kind of built into grit. Oh, by the way, that book Grit by Angela Duckworth is a phenomenal book. I highly recommend it if you're interested in how adverse experiences really sharpen us and make us stronger. And so we don't want life to be too easy. We know that people have experienced maybe too much ease, especially early in life. They are not as persistent because they have not learned that they can get through tough times. So that's the kind of the magic of grit. Okay, so now that you have your examples of your signature strengths, you have I cut ahead. You have your signature strength. So I invite you to think of an example. Very simple exercise. Because of that strength, here's an example of when I showed it. Whether it was humility, love, grit. Bring it to mind. You can close your eyes if you want to bring that example to mind. You can keep them open. It's really up to you. But see if you can just bring it, invite it into the space of your awareness. The time that you showed, maybe it was that spiritual presence, or maybe it was love, or maybe it was that humility. Again, I'm going to ask you the same questions. Who was with you, if anybody? Where were you? What time of day was it? Was it recent? Maybe it was today. What did it mean to you that you showed that strength? What did it mean about you in a good way? What good feelings emerged because you showed that strength, because you emanated that strength into the world and it lifted others up potentially by it? Think about those positive feelings. And I'm going to go back to our emotions slide. We use this slide quite a bit. And so go ahead and if you want, as you're thinking about using your strength, please put those into the chat so we can see what good feelings came along with your personal strength example. I feel like I'm using mine right now because today was felt like a long day, and I'm like you all have invigorated me just by your presence here and your participation. So I feel like the strength of zest is going along with connectedness, inspiration, and gratitude, because I'm grateful for the energy and I'm grateful for the opportunity to share that with you. So do we have positive emotions along with your strengths? I'm not seeing any come through in the chat. Oh, here's some. Awesome. Makita, your persistence is why you'll be graduating with your PharmD degree next month. Congratulations at the age of 50. Look, it doesn't matter how old you are. It's never, never, never a specific time frame for everybody. We can be in our 70s and 80s and still be achieving and finding new horizons and reaching our goals. So I love that, Makita. Congratulations. Um, Kelly says pride, Lashonda relief, hope and determination. Tiffany, I really like that. And that often goes with strengths. So hope and determination when we feel capable. Joy, love, connectedness for you, Kamira. Yeah, like fantastic, fantastic. So you're all doing it. You're doing it. And like it's not, I don't want to overcomplicate it. It's really like imagine your life if you did this 4 or 5 times a day. How would that change the fabric of your day? How would that change the wavelength and the frequency that you operate on if you were immersing yourself in the broaden and build through these pathways of internal positive spotlighting? How would that transform you? How would that change how you look at the future? I want to come back to zest for a minute. For those of you who mentioned zest, curiosity, love, and hope, they really strongly predict life satisfaction. So if you're using those strengths regularly, you're nurturing those strengths. And look, by the way, there may be some of those strengths on the list that you want to develop more. Fantastic. As you develop them, you'll experience higher levels of life satisfaction. If you use your top strengths in new ways, you might be happier. What do I mean by that? So who here likes to cook? And we have any chefs in the house? All right, all right. So, Jamie, you are. I saw some hands go up. Okay, so imagine, so that's your strength, your culinary strength. There's what strengths go into that: creativity, the love of food, sharing food. There's so many connectedness. Maybe if you love having meals and cooking for others and bringing them joy and happiness. Well, imagine that you cooked a new dish that you've never tried before, maybe let's say twice a week or 3 times a week. Well, you're using your culinary strength, your creativity, that connectedness piece, if you're having a meal with others that you cooked, in new ways. They're new dishes. And so what the research tells us that is that you are increasing your happiness because you're cooking in new ways. You're using your top strengths in new ways. If you have a lot of strengths, you might benefit from developing ones that are lesser in your mind. If you have few strengths, maybe on that list you only saw 1 or 2, and that's perfectly okay. You might benefit from exercising your top 1 or 2 more often, right? Those are the strategic decisions we can make based on the research. Lots of strengths, develop your lower ones. Just a few you feel like you're not strong, work on bring those out more, call them out to be in your life. And oh, there's something in the chat. So Des, you used your humility many times today while working with IT. Fantastic. Made you feel proud of yourself. Yeah, for being vulnerable. Absolutely something great to be proud of. Exercising vulnerability and being open, right? About challenges rather than trying to hide them and troubleshooting them on your own. Yes, I wish we could go back to that strengths list. I am gonna go back to it. We're gonna add one tonight. All right, everybody ready? Vulnerability is now a personal strength. We wouldn't expect it. Like, how are you saying that vulnerability is a strength? It is a personal strength. And Des, you just reminded us that it's a personal strength. So anytime you're vulnerable, you are open to new learning. You're open to new energies, and you're increasing your happiness. All right. So again, I'm not going to speed through like a speed racer through the rest of these. We're going to get to as many as we can in the time that we have together, and in as deep a way as we can. And then the rest, what I'll do is I'll send the PowerPoint out, and you can look at the other ones or read the book. So cultivating gratitude. This is the last one for this evening since we only have a few minutes left. Oh, Tiffany, you struggle with vulnerability. Yeah, so kudos to Des. Um, yeah, turning vulnerability into a strength. That's like a whole nother topic in the financial wellness series. So like maybe yeah, we'll consider that one for next year or another webinar. I think that there's a lot in that. So gratitude. Anytime you practice thankfulness, I'll keep it real simple. Anytime you're in a state of appreciation, you're more likely to feel more optimistic. You're more likely to sleep better, the research shows. You're more likely to appreciate the people you're in relationship with, right? And the more likely they are to feel connected to you, it strengthens bonds. The more likely you are to have lower levels of depression and lower levels of anxiety. We call gratitude in positive psychology a meta strategy because it underlies so many of the benefits that we see from this field and the application of this field. So our last activity tonight is going to be a meditation, and I really love that we'll end with this one. And I call it the step ladder of gratitude. So I'd invite you all, with eyes open or closed, whichever feels more comfortable for you, to bring your attention to your breathing. And as you notice yourself breathing, the sensation of air moving into your body and leaving your body, sending thoughts of appreciation and feelings of gratitude for your breath. The beginning of everything good that you create in your life resides first within your breath. feeling that this is the gift that is always with you in any moment, no matter what is happening in your life. Connecting with that gift right now. And allowing the gift of your breathing to fade somewhat into the background of your mind, bringing your attention to a basic need of yours that has been satisfied, that has been nourished. Thinking of some way, whether it's the clothing you're wearing, the roof over your head, the opportunity to be connected with somebody, having food to eat, clean water to drink, clean air to breathe, and sending thoughts and feelings of appreciation toward the source of those basic needs being met for you. Feeling the emanation of appreciation for those gifts that may be overlooked. Keeping in mind, feeling thankful for your breath as you're connecting with a basic need. And now allowing that focus on a basic need being nourished to fade again somewhat into the background, but not leaving. Bringing your mind to something that you decided to do, that you feel thankful for, that you decided to do. An action that you've taken. Perhaps it was to care for yourself in some way, treat yourself. Perhaps it was to reach out to someone if you were feeling lonely. Perhaps it was to enroll in a program at PCOM. Sending thoughts and feelings of appreciation toward your own wisdom within yourself that led you to take that action. Feeling your own sense of appreciation for taking that wonderful step. And now allowing that focus to fade a little bit into the background, but still with you. Bringing your mind to someone in your life who you feel deeply thankful for. Someone that you feel close to, perhaps. Someone who they may be with you, they may not be with you. And seeing that person in your mind's eye as vividly as possible and as positive a state as you can imagine. And sending that person thoughts and feelings of deep thankfulness, deep appreciation. And imagining them receive those feelings and thoughts from you. Perhaps noticing how happy that makes them feel to receive the emanation of your positive and grateful thoughts. Perhaps it brings you closer to them. Now, allowing that individual to fade just a little bit into the background or stepping back into the background of your gratitude, still there and still very much present in your feelings of appreciation and witnessing them and feeling them. And for our last step, bringing to mind something you're grateful for in the broader world. Something bigger than yourself. Perhaps it's gratitude for nature, the state or community you live in, the group or a group that you're a part of. Perhaps it's your family. Perhaps it's God. Perhaps it's a divine presence. And sending your thoughts and feelings of appreciation and thankfulness toward that broader force in the world. Imagining, if you will, that the scope and the strength of your appreciation is such that it can wrap its entire energy around the entire earth and beyond. That there are no limits to the source of love that fuels your gratitude. And there are no limits to the healing nature of your thankfulness. And now, if your eyes were closed, inviting them to open and coming back to this space of having just walked up this wonderful ladder of gratitude, collecting all of these different sources This is one of my favorite exercises that we do in the program. And it's a little bit different than a gratitude journal, which is another approach which can be helpful, which many people talk about. But this is a way of what I call aggregation, what I call bringing together multiple sources. And with each source you bring in, you're expanding the energy base, the momentum, the positive thoughts and meanings. It's like a balloon and you're blowing up the balloon, right? And the wider it gets, the more space it takes up and the more powerful it is and the more enduring the effects it will have. So if you can aggregate through this exercise, even if you're just picking 2 or 3 sources, then you are in really good stead. So it's been lovely being with you this evening. I wanna go. I'm gonna fly across. First of all, I'm gonna stop the share, and I'm gonna reshare because I want to show you one other thing before we end today. But do you have any questions before we end? I'll stick around for an extra 5 minutes if you have a few minutes. But I just want to show you. I want to show you this slide if I can. Okay, yep, here it is. I'm gonna have to go fast. It didn't let me do that. So, okay, here it is. Okay, so there's my book. If you're interested in checking out A Happier You, the book is available on Amazon. It's also in the PCOM library. So I think they have an electronic version that's free. So if you like to read digitally, that's great. I like to have the physical copy in front of me. There's something lovely these days about having a physical book. And I'd love to hear from you. If you have any questions about flourishing, about positive psychology, about really any of these strategies at all, reach out to me and I'll be happy to talk with you. So again, I want to thank the wonderful financial wellness team, and you make our lives better. And I'm so appreciative of the opportunity to share this with you this evening. Thank you.